What exactly is an innovation agency? We've been exploring that for 20 years. 2001, when Vinova came about, was a dramatic year. And Sweden ranked high, like today, on various innovation indexes. Since our beginnings, we've connected businesses, researchers, and the public sector. We have been giving the opportunity to experiment and try out new ideas before they become profitable for the benefit of society and Sweden's competitiveness. We have seen that it's become increasingly more important to shift our gaze away from technology towards the systems, that the public sector and civil society play an important role in innovation, that the solutions we develop must be economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable, that there's a need for modern and effective policies and rules, and to move entire systems, you need bold and inspiring goals. The need for new solutions is more urgent than ever. The challenges are complex and interconnected. That's what our solutions need to be. As an innovation agency, we have a responsibility to drive that change. We're ready, and it's urgent, and we need to co-create with the rest of the world. Together, we will make Sweden an innovative force in a sustainable world.
Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And at this event, that is a part of Vinnova's contribution to Sweden's Innovation Week. And Sweden's Innovation Week, Innovationsveckan, focuses on the public sector and the public sector's innovation capacity. My name is Jenny Engström, and I have a great pleasure to moderate this seminar on public sector as change agents for sustainability. You have the possibility to use the chat for questions and comments, and we will do this all together. So please give us your comments and your questions. So how can government ROI funding contribute to the sustainable transition the world so urgently needs? We will learn more about that today from Sustainable Development Technology Canada, Sdtc, and Vinnova. And Sdtc is an independent federal foundation flagship program that helps Canadian companies develop and deploy competitive clean technology solutions, and also to grow Canada's economy. So we are very honored to welcome today's special guests. Lee Lawrence, who is the President and CEO of Sdtc. And she has a long time advocate of entrepreneurship, innovation, and environment. Since taking the helm of Sdtc in 2015, she has transformed the organization to be the largest funder of small and medium-sized climate tech enterprises in Canada and the most crucial actor in helping startups in every region of the country grow into globally competitive businesses that will deliver economic and environmental prosperity to Canadians. Drawing from her years of experience as an entrepreneur herself, Leah relentlessly focused on outcomes that has made her a timeless champion for Canadians' climate tech companies. Recognizing the importance of intellectual property as integral to the success of young companies, Leah was instrumental in the formation of the Innovation Asset Collective, Canada's first patent collective, where she currently serves as vice chair of its board of directors. She also recently co-authored the report Climate Change Impact on Canadian National Security, published by the Centre for International Governance and Innovation as a part of a larger project to reimagine Canada's national security strategy. So as I said, Leah, we are so honored to have you here today, and I look forward to listening to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Jenny. The honor is completely mine, and looking forward to talking about our shared experiences. Sdtc is, I think, maybe 6, 8, 10 months younger than Vinova. I'd have to go check some dates, but we have many, many, I think, shared paths that we can talk about as we go forward. But it is my pleasure, though, to share some of those lessons learned from my perspective as the head of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, to make some observations from our side. And then I really look forward, though, to hearing your comments on where we're similar, where we're different, and of course, how we might think about the future together. So my approach will be as follows. First, I'm going to just throw up a few statistics about Sweden and Canada's similarities and differences geographically, but also as they relate to climate change and our respective paths to net zero. Second, I'll talk a little bit about Sdtc, its place in Canada's innovation ecosystem, and how it's changing. And third, I'll try to tackle or get us started on that question: how can government ROI funding contribute to the sustainable transition the world so urgently needs? That's certainly something we think about every day and love to get new ideas and perspectives on that. So let's get started. The first, maybe we can put up the comparison slide. From an economic perspective, let me just step back. Sdtc's mandate, was shown in the video, perhaps as Vinnova's as well, is to be always thinking about the two aspects of sustainable prosperity and economic prosperity. So I'll put up some statistics related to these to get us started. So we can see from this slide that we're both, of course, small, open, export-focused economies trying to make it in the net zero world. And this means that we're constantly assessing these dual purposes of environmental and economic prosperity and thinking about how they come together and how they separate. With respect to net zero readiness, both our countries are taking legislative actions and measures, and have for many years, to decarbonize our economies and to achieve net zero goals. And this is reflected in our relatively high rankings, for example, on the KPMG Net Zero Readiness Index, with Sweden ranking 3rd and Canada 8th of the most recent ranking of 35 countries. And these really speak to our respective priorities in climate and sustainability. Just digging maybe a little deeper, because this is where we start to separate on differences, is we can look at the challenge by sector. And so you can see here that if we look at the emissions share and performance by sector, that electricity and heat still remain significantly high for Canada, and whereas the leading one would be transport for Sweden. And so we have some differences you can just see there in the sectoral emission shares and performance between our two nations. And I think that speaks maybe to some of the strategies that we've put forward, some of the different ones, but then also some of the shared ones, which would be, for example, trying to figure out supply chains and nanomaterials and all kinds of important innovations that will help us with renewable energy, and other kinds of key technologies going forward. But of course, and this isn't news to you, the clock is ticking. I thought I'd share just a slide I put forward to my board of directors just last month, where I spoke. On the right-hand side, you can see about, 2030 is just 8 years away. And many economic agencies, Canada's, the United States, maybe Sweden, would talk about how business investment cycles are usually about 5 years on average, which would mean that we have less than 2 business investment cycles to make a difference on those 2030 goals, which means that our actions right now are urgent and crucial. And of course, 2030 is just the beginning. The International Energy Agency reports often speak of half of the technologies needed to achieve net zero are known today. That means that half of them aren't, which means we still need dual focus on R&D and commercialization. But in particular, given this 8-year time horizon, commercialization is a key focus, and that's definitely the focus of Sustainable Development Technology Canada. And that brings me to the left-hand slide, a side of this slide, which this is our data, looking at our portfolio of hundreds of companies and thinking about, these are the successful ones, thinking about, as in they still exist, thinking about how long does it actually take for a company to go from inception, when it incorporates, to 10 million in revenue? And that could be maybe a proxy for commercialization and success. You can see from the financial statistics there that perhaps they're just starting to get to break even and transforming themselves into profitable enterprises. Well, you can see the math there is 13 to 15 years, which means that 8 compared to 13 to 15 years is a problem. The math doesn't add up. And so I think if I had to pick just one of the greatest challenges of public and private sector change agents on sustainability, it's this. The speed of commercialization historically is just too slow. And so how do we get our minds and hearts around accelerating this timeline, as we definitely need to? And so that brings me to the definition of innovation. This, of course, can be different depending on who you talk to. For Sdtc, because our focus is commercialization, because we're really trying to get these companies over the line and get their steel in the ground, so to speak, depending metaphorically on what they're trying to do, I think it should be very clear that our definition of innovation is commercialization. How we think about it, without commercialization, there can be no economic growth. Without commercialization, there's definitely no environmental benefit. And some would even say in our circles that without commercialization, there is no innovation. And that brings me to the second piece, which is that it is really economic agents or companies that commercialize things. And so for Sdtc, our North Star, who we think about always, is the companies that are trying to bring innovations to market, to commercialize them not once, but many times, repeatedly, because that is the way we will achieve this dual purpose and our mandate, which is sustainable prosperity as well as economic prosperity. So that brings me to a little bit more detail about Sdtc and who we are and what we do and how we've changed, perhaps more importantly. As was said in the introduction, Sdtc is an independent federal foundation. We're a flagship program of Canada's federal government, in particular in its actions that it's taking on climate change and sustainable development. We are in a partnership with many other federal innovation agencies. There are, I think the last count, about 90, but our real big and sole mandate is around the commercialization of technologies with small and medium-sized enterprises as they relate to sustainability. So in that, like many innovation agencies, we look to create jobs, growth, and that long-term prosperity. And we are relentlessly focused on the scaling of companies and commercialization of climate and clean technology. Since inception, over 20 years, we've invested about 1.53 billion in Canadian companies, and we have about another 750 million to spend over the next 4 years. We anticipate that will continue after that, but it gives you the context of 2+ billion in the 25 years of our history when we get to the 25th anniversary a few years from now. Our funded companies, of course, span the country. They span many sizes, and they are tackling many, many things. And I'll get into that in a moment. Over the last few years, 5 years about, we've fundamentally rethought our organization from the ground up. Every process, every job, every approach that we had in this effort to try and make the math better than the 8 and 13 to 15 years. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how it looks. So maybe 3 fundamental things, maybe just go back one, please, if you can. 3 fundamental things. The first thing we did is, I've spoken a lot about net zero and climate so far, but we recognize that the world's sustainability challenges are much broader than that. And so we have three investment areas, which I'll just speak to here for the moment. So obviously climate is one, the second is circular economy, and the third is people, nature, and communities. And so those three priority areas were launched in our most recent corporate plan. We're about 9 or so months into working in those areas and really thinking about how Canada and its entrepreneurs will succeed and differentiate themselves in those key areas. So some similarities, I think, with Sweden. Now, as we think about that, we think about the continuum of firm evolution. What do they look like over those 13 to 15 years? And how do we, as an innovation agency, need to change our perspective as we work with an entrepreneur on their journey? So here you can see an illustration of our three streams of funding, which have been in operation for a few years now. So the first is seed funding streams, and in that we're looking for really early stage companies. They have an idea, they're just testing its interest in market, they're just testing its potential for environmental transformation. There may be a few people, 3, 5 maybe, and they've raised very small amounts of capital, maybe a few $100,000. We have a program there that is very quick because we want entrepreneurs in this space to be able to try an idea quickly, and if it works, go on to the next phase, and if it doesn't work, try a new idea. So it's a 4 to 6 week program. Companies are nominated by accelerators across the country, and we have a panel of an entrepreneur, a board member of Sdtc, as well as another individual that would be knowledgeable in innovation, who serve as a panel to say yes or no to the pitch of that seed company. And as I said, 4 to 6 weeks for that program in terms of from first pitch to first check. Second stream of funding is startup funding. This is our bread and butter. Most of the 200 million in funds that we allocate a year would go to startup kinds of companies. So these are graduates, sometimes of seed, sometimes they don't come through seed, but they're really looking for 3 to 5 million to go take that next step in building their company and growing their idea, their innovation to make it relevant at a pilot scale or a minimum viable product, to bring in partners to help with the co-creation and co-design, and to really get the company, hopefully, to be revenue positive, but if not quite, potentially soon in the near future. Then comes the scale-up phase. This is our newest stream of funding. This is really for those firms that haven't quite taken their second, third, perhaps fourth minimal viable product or process and to full scale. So an example might be a biofuels facility that is trying a new technology, has tested it a couple times at pre-commercial sizes, and really needs to now work with a partner alongside them to figure out how to get to full scale and economic viability. So this funding can go up to $20 million and really is the final phase of commercialization. Now, what I would say about all three of these streams is it's not a one and done process. As I had already mentioned with seed, companies can try an idea, it might not work out, and then they might come back and try another idea. Startup can be similar because in this situation, what companies and what we often see are doing is that they're building a platform, which, for example, might be a water technology that needs to be tailored for the municipal market, the industrial market, and the energy market. So we'll be dealing with different kinds of quality problems. We'll be dealing with different kinds of technical challenges, and we'll have to design, develop, and test a platform technology that is slightly different in each of those prospective markets. So a startup company might come to us a few times with varying kinds of approaches for different markets. So seed, startup, and scale up, those are our streams of funding and how we approach the company and try to provide them with the supports they need. Now, in and around that are the ecosystem approaches. So, money is important, but it's not necessarily the defining factor on success for a company that gets to scale. Often it can be the network, the customer, the expanded labor force that they might need as they grow. And in Canada, where we have this large geography, what's really important is connectivity across the country to differing kinds of skills and talent, differing kinds of approaches. So one of our teams that's their job, to think about what are the supports a company might need over time as they grow, and then not provide those supports necessarily ourselves. In fact, almost very rarely would we provide the supports ourselves, to actually find those in the ecosystem that are best in class at providing those supports and connecting the entrepreneurs to them. Case in point, for example, would be intellectual property, which is a key commercialization factor now for any export-focused company. And so here in Canada, we have the Innovation Asset Collective. They're best in class nationally and globally in terms of thinking about sustainable technologies and what kinds of intellectual property strategies a company might need to pursue over time, and working with those companies to help them in the early stages, but also in the late stages, and developing their offensive and defensive strategies for IP. Okay, so that's the streams of funding and ecosystems of supports that we have. Now let's just talk a little bit about how our internal focus had to change. So, 7 years ago when I took the helm, we put about, between 80 to $100 million into the ecosystem on an annual basis. And that was important. It was on par for the time. But as many will know, that in recent years, and especially in the last 2 or 3, we have seen exponential growth in private and public sector investment into sustainable technologies, and in particular climate tech. And so alongside that, Sdtc has moved forward with more than doubling the amount of money that we're putting into the market each year, and more than doubling the number of companies that we're supporting each year, knowing that the more innovation that we can seed, the more companies that are actively working on these problems, the more likely is that we'll get success in breakthrough technologies and innovations on a go-forward basis. The second thing, and this is what's illustrated in the graph on the right-hand side, is that we had to really rethink our internal processes and the speed at which we provided funding. You can see there that from first call to first check, our average processing time, 5 or so years ago was over a year. If you go prior to that, it was more than over a year. And then you can see today that our average processing time have dropped down to months, depending on the stream. All streams are in months, but some of them are quite short, the 4 to 6 weeks I talked about, and some of them are 3 or so months, depending on a longer due diligence process. But why did we do this? Because the firms were telling us that this was the kind of speed they needed to be able to commercialize alongside their competitors, but also to meet those longer term goals of sustainability that we're aspiring to. So those, I can talk some more about that, but that really was a key focus. 2 more key focuses. Inclusive innovation has been a big focus for us for 3 or 4 years now. We have put in place processes and ecosystem funding to, for example, fund the first First Nations accelerator for entrepreneurs at a college in Canada, and those that first cohort of 15 First Nations entrepreneurs graduated from that college in the springtime of this year, and the second will of course be in class probably as we speak. Another thing we did is focused on female founders, and in fact seen some good traction there. Seeing, as we bring more female founders into seed and provide them with the supports they might need to get to scale up, seeing good transition. Maybe 10, 20% might have been good numbers for us a few years ago. Now we're seeing 30, 40% transition into seed and then into startup as time goes on, and we expect those numbers to grow. So important focuses as we look at the inclusive aspects of innovation along with sustainability and economic prosperity. So I think I would just conclude there, and then we can have a good conversation, I'm sure, with the fact that, I have worked on climate change for many decades, and I have never been more positive than I am today that we will achieve the economic and environmental prosperity that we seek. I can see amazing entrepreneurs doing fabulous things, reducing emissions and changing our cities, our communities, our nations on a day-to-day basis. And I couldn't be so proud, I couldn't be more proud to be part of that as a champion for entrepreneurs here in Canada and also globally. And I look forward to now learning, Jenny, from you and the others that are participating today on the things that are happening in Sweden.
Thank you so much, Leah, and I am grateful and happy that you are positive about the future and that we will get there, because I think that is what we need as well. We need to be positive about the future, and a lot of companies are doing a lot of things and putting together their brain trust in order to be able to take these challenges heads on. You mentioned 8 years. It's 8 years left to 2030, and that we have 2 investment cycles left. I can refer to Sweden's public procurement agency, who says that it's 2 public procurements away as well. So as when we talk about commercialization, that is also important, looking at the public sector as a procurer and a buyer of innovative things as well. So really 8 years away, it's not a lot, but if we use it wisely, then we will absolutely get there. And just as you at Sdtc supports companies, that is what Vinova does as well, but we also work with the academia, the civil societies and the NGOs and the public sector. So to get a twist on this with being a change agent, we are going to talk about how we try to embed sustainability in the way we work and how we work with the public sector also when they receive public funding. So we will take a twist on this and add to this, and then we will have a conversation about that. So thank you, Leah, for this inspiring information. So now I would like to introduce 2 of my colleagues. So here at Vinnova, Sweden's innovation agency, and I'm just going to put you up here. There you are. Technology, we love technology, right? So I would like to introduce you to 2 of my colleagues, Lotten Julin, Coordinator Agenda 2030, and Anna Bjurström, Program Manager Public Sector. And we will start off with Lotten talking about how we actually embed sustainability in our funding and work at Vinnova. Over to you, Lotten.
Thank you so much, and hi everyone. As Jenny was saying, my name is Lotten, and I am the Agenda 2030 coordinator here at Vinova. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about SDGs. Also that is the Sustainable Development Goals. I think the sound is working, right? Yeah, perfect. So for the formal part, Vinnova's instruction states that our task is to promote sustainable growth by financing need-based research and development of effective innovation systems. But simply put, our mission is to enable innovation that makes a difference. And by that we mean a difference to the planet and a difference to Sweden's economy and prosperity. And we believe that innovation is the only way for us to reach the sustainable future, to maintain our competitiveness, create well-paying jobs, and safeguarding the Swedish welfare state in the long term. And we need to promote innovation that is sustainable for our environment, for our society, and for our economy. And innovation is more important than ever, and time is running out. And the challenges on a global scale is severe, and we believe that we have to think and act differently. And as Vinnova sustainability work, many of the goals in the Agenda 2030 are strongly dependent on each other. The challenge is complex, and it cannot be broken down into smaller sub-goals that an individual player has the ability or responsibility to solve. And you could say that the Agenda 2030 is the world's largest border for innovation. And we do need a form of control that helps us to shift entire systems and not individual parts of the system. And we believe that we need to complement innovation that is focused on creating new products and services with system changes that includes everyone. And for Vinnova's sustainability mission, that is to promote sustainable growth by improving the conditions for innovation. In Agenda 2030, we have pointed out the climate and gender equality as two key perspectives to which we must make a positive contribution. And these perspectives are on the agenda, but how we work with them is also governed by our national goals linked to gender equality, climate, and the environment. And what role does Vinnova play as an innovation agency? Well, we believe we have an important one to facilitate innovation in a time when it's needed the most. We note that to contribute to the sustainable transformation, we need to take on a broader role, not only as a provider of funding, but as an agent of change, sharing our expertise. And this can be a matter of identifying, mobilizing, and funding. And our project vary. It can be anything from project to promote social and norm-critical innovation to innovation in the mine with 5G technology. But what all of our projects have in common is that we all aim for a better sustainable future. To make the sustainable transformation, we believe in collaboration. We need to use the public funding with the public sector. Innovation and global cooperation are crucial for creating a sustainable future. We need innovation at all stages to transform the entire system. No single sector or organization alone can find solutions to the complex challenges we face, but everyone must contribute and work in the same direction. A common direction is needed to create the development society needs. All parts of society and all the projects we finance have to contribute to the global goals. Thank you. And now I will leave it to my colleague, Anna, to talk a little more about projects.
Yeah, we would be happy, of course, to share with you some examples of how we go about this work that Lotten referred to. And starting out, I will tell you about a unique collaboration between Livsmedelsverket, Swedish food agency, and Vinnova have been exploring how to design a sustainable system for school meals together with municipalities, businesses, and a number of key players on the national level. So this project, called A New Recipe for School Meals, results from a work Vinnova has done to gather actors from the entire food system. And it was an early pilot within Vinnova's work with mission-oriented working methods. For your information, in Sweden, all schools serve a hot meal at lunchtime, free of charge. Swedish municipalities buy food for 5 to 10 billion Swedish crowns every year. This is not only school food, that would include all public meals, but still it's a fair amount. And this means there is an enormous potential for increased innovation in the entire food system and increased competitiveness for companies if these resources are used to promote innovation and change. And to achieve the global sustainability goals, we need to change this entire food system so that food can be produced, bought, and eaten in a way that benefits both health and the environment. 8 governmental agencies and 4 municipalities have joined forces to address this mission that every child in Sweden eats healthy, tasty, and sustainable school meals. The 4 participating municipalities have participated and contributed with development environments to test innovative solutions, so-called prototypes, in practice. And in order to keep a holistic approach, the prototypes all address multiple targets. For example, obviously, teaching children about sustainable food, but also challenging producers, creating awareness, working with kitchen staff, and as well as, of course, principles for procurement. During this work, the project has gathered students, teachers, school leaders, and principals, cooks, dietitians, city planners, producers, wholesalers, and many more for the first time to jointly seek innovative solutions, how to create a system for sustainable school meals. And this work is ongoing, and we look forward to following the results. The next example I'd like to share with you targets the SDG goal 14, life below water. This is a project called the Spiral project, and it supports the design of the producer responsibility scheme issued by the European Union regarding fishing gear prior to its full implementation, which is on December 2024. The target area is that 25% of plastic ocean waste comes from fishing. And the municipality of Sotenäs, which is the public partner in this project, hosts a unique recycling center for marine litter. It's co-located with a test bed, providing opportunities for testing innovative ways of upcycling. Some of the more spectacular creations in this test bed comes from designers of furniture, as seen in this picture, and even clothes. This is a 6-meter sofa made from ocean waste. So the project itself is a part of Vinnova's Smart Policy Development and Innovation Initiative, and it supports the introduction of this producer responsibility scheme. It involves testing and developing new forms of cooperation and knowledge transfer between agencies, producers, and other operators, with the aim of creating better and more effective working practices and ensuring a level playing field. The main focus of the project is co-creation and testing with the market, those who will also be affected by the new policy, producers and other actors who contribute with the knowledge and experience. And the producers are actively involved in the project's development towards an effective and better functioning producer responsibility scheme. Collaboration is key, and that's sort of the northern star for the Vinnova focus in bringing actors together in addressing the societal changes. So that, Jenny, was the contribution for now from Lotten and myself, and we trust on you to take us further.
Yes, and I would like to invite Leah back to the digital room as well. So thank you. I think this is really, really interesting. How can we both use our public funding and how can we use the public sector to actually accelerate both the sustainability but also the innovation and the competitiveness of our nations? Changes are coming fast, and how are we going to make everyone ready to be a part of this transformation? We need the speed of commercialization. We need these solutions to be in place and to help us towards 2030. But how are we going to get everyone on board? The trust in governments, the trust in the democratic system, the trust in companies. How are we going to make this happen? Leah, do you have a thought on this?
Well, that's a big question, Jenny.
I know.
Well, you know, when I think about questions like that, I always break it down to what can happen on a local community level, which is why I love some of the examples that Anne and Lawton just gave. And so that's, I think, how we start out by making it real. And so we've done two things, I think, in the last year to try and break it down on a community level. One is really spending a lot of time profiling local innovators, entrepreneurs, and they don't have to be necessarily in our system yet, but identifying them and allowing us to be able to give them visibility so others can try to emulate and think about what they look like. The other thing is, and I think this is where you already are, is that we spend a lot of time wondering about those entrepreneurs who might not actually call us. And where were they and how could we get to know them? And that in particular, I think, are some of the social innovators that you're probably seeing as well. If we go back, say, 5, 7, 10 years ago, you know, very much large industrial innovators tackling, you know, big industrial problems, usually people in their 40s or 50s who had worked a long time and you know, had a lot of depth of experience in that kind of space. But we didn't see a lot of smaller social innovation kinds of activities that brought local communities in. And we recognized, just as your collaborative examples spoke to, that you actually need both and many other things as well. So we did some work with Edelman, a large consulting firm, and just had them go out into communities and ask questions about, okay, what is preventing, how do you self-identify as an innovator? What does that look like? And if you're not approaching Sdtc, why not? And so in that way, we realized there was 2 or 3 other innovation communities that we needed to tap into, that we needed to develop programs for, that we need to encourage to come forward. And we did that. And that's part of the reason, you know, I talked earlier that we've seen a doubling in the number of women-led firms. Part of it is that. The other thing is, you know, part of it is as well that if you're in a larger center, you know, in Canada, that'd be Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, your network is easier to access. It's larger, they're local. But if you're in a much smaller center, you know, maybe a city with 75 to 200,000 or 500,000 people, harder to connect to that kind of network, might not even be in your community. So the second thing we've done is really put in place programs to allow people to identify people in smaller communities, but then to connect them, identify what they might need, connect them to other entrepreneurs, connect them to other supports, connect them to, you know, researchers or others that might be able to help them with some of their company growth challenges, to people who might have more support. So, you know, so to answer the question, how do we get there? You got to break it down to the individual, I think. And in our case, that's entrepreneurs, and then connect them where they need to be connected and want to be connected to the broader community that can help them know what they don't know. And that's really what we do every day.
It's beautiful, Leah, because I was thinking about one conclusion in a report that we just got about social change makers. And one of the points, one of the key findings there was it is lonely out there. So they still have a problem both finding each other, but also finding their ways into networks, systems, fundings. So you are actually going for it, making sure it's not lonely out there. So
and Jenny, it's so simple. Like when I remember with the first time we put up that 13 to 15 year graph that I showed earlier, I know one of the entrepreneurs came up to me after and went, "Oh my goodness, thank goodness. I thought it was just us."
yeah, absolutely.
It's a long time. It takes a lot of work, and to know that, well, on the one hand, to know that that's the journey, maybe that's a little daunting, but on the other hand, to know that everybody else is going to I think helps.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of time, but we don't have the time. So it will be a shorter. We need to have shorter implementation routes and commercialization routes. And Lotten, I would like to talk to you a little bit about, you went to the UN at a meeting this summer, and you talked about innovation and change and sustainability, of course, but there were some issues there that was about trust and about integration and so on. How are we going to get everyone on board, Lotten?
That is the million-dollar question. But what was said at the HLPF, the High Level Political Forum at UN, what was a common theme was how to get marginalized groups or certain people more involved in the process. And I think that's a key for both of our countries forward, to include everyone in the process. How the last year's crisis has demonstrated how the social injustice it's been a wider gap for different people, and how we need to include them in the process, in the conversations, in the financial flows, how certain people get more financial support than others. And that's something we need to talk about more, I think. So not the answer to the question, but something.
I think that maybe the conclusion is that everyone needs to be a part of the transformation and the transitions that we're in right now. So we will have to work at a broad perspective and on a broad level with both solutions and involvement in the different parts of the process, of course. We are running out of time at this seminar as well, but I am sticking with this positive feeling that you gave me, Leah, that it's absolutely possible to find these different solutions. That is what we feel here at Vinnova as well. There are a lot of big ideas out there that could help us make the world a much better place. And we just need to see that we also can commercialize and use these solutions in a broader context. So I would like to thank you, Leah, and I would like to thank you, Lotten and Anna, for contributing to this seminar. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.
You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.